I think you would agree with me that there is a strong parallelism between the first reading that we heard today from the Old Testament and the Gospel reading. Both talked about complaints, murmurings, whispers, complaints. And the Lord was the object of the complaint. But Joshua had it in his heart that he was doing the right thing, leading the people in place of Moses, who had gone ahead at the time. And Joshua confronted the people, decide today whom choose. Take your choice, make your choice today, whom you shall follow. The first reading tells us that the people said, far be it that we will betray the Lord. When Joshua said, as for me and my household, I will continue to follow the Lord. The gospel, however, differs in this regard, because it was the disciples who were his close-in followers who started falling away, not the general public, not those who had nothing to do with Moses, not those who were considered close-in followers of Joshua and Aaron, but it was the very close-in followers of the Lord who started falling out. The Gospel of John tells us many of his disciples veered away from the path that he was telling them, returned to their former way of life, and no longer accompanied him. I'm saying this because right now, the great Babylonian exile that happened in the Old Testament, when the Jews were made slaves and thrown into a strange city, a pagan city by the name of Babylon, it is happening right here in our midst. And the analog of the great Babylonian exile is the pandemic that began in November 2019. They don't want it to call it Wuhan virus, but all the rest of the viruses are called by the place of its origin. Spanish flu, Marburg virus, and so many other things. Ebola virus is named after a river in Africa, but not Wuhan. Not Wuhan. Why? There is politics involved. And there is a lot of faithlessness involved here. A lot of economics, geoeconomics, geopolitics, everything that has to do with a world order that is now rapidly changing. And this world order has to do with veering away from the path that the Lord would have us follow. The sad thing is that whilst in the Old Testament, it was the general public who were complaining, first to Moses, complaining that they were brought away from the meat that they enjoyed and the spices that they enjoyed in Egypt, and they were roaming around in the desert for 40 years. And they were eating only quails and manna from the sky. And they were complaining, well, the great Babylonian exile. The parallel of this is the great pandemic that we are now reeling under, that we are now suffering from. And today, the temptation is exactly what empty churches have become. And now, please, allow me to give you the other side of the story. And the other side of the story now is not just the disciples complaining, not just the disciples going away, not just the people murmuring and whispering among themselves, but now it is the turn of the Lord to complain to us. Do you also want to leave? Do you also want to leave? The reality is that right now, people are living in droves. The single fastest growing religion in America is the religion of the nuns. I'm not talking about NUNS, sisters, contemplative nuns. I'm talking about NONES. The religion of the nuns are those who, finding the teaching of the Lord so difficult, so hard to listen to, simply chose to go away. They are non-atheists, they are non-believers, they are non-Christians, they are non-denominational, they are non-committal, they are nuns. They don't subscribe to anything. And what does this mean? They respectfully listen to us in Catholic schools in our online classes and claim that their professed theology is what we are teaching them. But their operational theology is really the cancel culture. Their operational theology really has to do with not only the cancel culture, but the culture of, ikaw na ang magaling. They cancel everybody who does not agree with them. Today, the question for you and me, including me, is this. When we are so discouraged and afraid and anxious because of the pandemic that doesn't seem to go away anytime soon, and despite all our best efforts and mismanaged handling of it, and the corruption of the 67 billion, not to mention the 15 billion that nobody is accepting and nobody is apparently feeling guilty for, we can just go away and simply not pray and simply allow ourselves to be taken over by depression. Today the Lord tells us, will you also go away? I'd like to hold on to what Simon Peter now reminds us of. Simon Peter, who took up the leadership at that point in time when his disciples were shaking in faith that they could not put a handle on, when they were anxious and afraid and maybe disgruntled in this Babylonian exile of the pandemic, the Simon Peter of faith answered the Lord, Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. You see, and this is my final concept this morning. The beautiful thing about the report of John the Evangelist, when the disciples themselves and not the general public were falling away from the right path, the Lord could have given them a politically correct teaching. Oh no, this is not what I mean. The Lord could have said, I was just talking symbolically. I'm talking not about my body, but about the bread that is a symbol of my body. No. The Lord held on to His hard teaching. And when He held on to His hard teaching, it is because He was teaching truth. No more, no less. Truth that is unacceptable, truth that is hard to accept. But He went on teaching the truth because this is the truth that saves. And no matter the absence of people who claim to believe, no matter the declaration that we cannot gather in worship because of a scientific virus that cannot be denied. I don't know whether it was manufactured, but it cannot be denied. It is a reality. Our temptation is to become a non-committal, non-believer, but non-atheist also. I don't say I don't believe in God, but I don't also pray to Him, which is practical atheism. We are tempted to just let go and not allow God room in our lives, because this God allows us to suffer. And I have good news for you. Even philosophers tell us that in their even modern psychology in their definition of person that is not based on the scholastic, static definition of a person as a rational suppositum. Don't ask me what that means because that will be a 3-hour lecture. But the definition of a person is relational. That definition of person that comes from modern philosophy and modern psychology tells us that the human person adequately understood also includes the capacity to suffer. And when you accept in your heart that in the existential definition of what it means to be human, suffering is part and part of the package, part and parcel of the package of what it means to be human, then you know what you should answer. Will you also go away? I think the invitation for us all today is what Peter tells us, and we should answer in unison with Peter that great act of faith and hope and trust in a God who has allowed us this great Babylonian exile of the pandemic, but who never leaves us in the lurch. The God of mercy and compassion, the God who still calls us to total and integral salvation in His own good time. The answer of Peter, the answer of faith and hope and trust, is something we should not let go of today and every day for that matter. Master, to whom shall we go? You alone have the words of eternal life.